Fire Emblem Fates was released in Japan quite a bit before its international one, and like all original scripts, localizations tried to alter and adjust them to fit the market they're about to sell to. This video lists the 7 biggest Fire Emblem Fates main story, Conquest, Birthright and Revelation, writing differences between the original translated Japanese script and the localization we received. This won't include supports or DLC differences, as there are plenty enough here to analyze. While some differences vary from slight to a little more significant, the story of Fates is of course the same. So while these may be the 7 biggest differences, bear in mind that these simply manage to present events and characters in a slightly different way between versions. The idea for this video is thanks to the CORRIN fans Tumblr blog. This blog keeps a record of translations and comparisons. Many of the differences noted here were made by the author of this blog, so credit and inspiration of this video goes to them. So if you want a much more in-depth look at the differences in total, including supports and DLC, check the link in the description. Number 1. Lore. Mostly in Birthright, some lore present in the Japanese script was omitted for the English release. In Chapter 3, when Lilith saves CORRIN by transforming into a fish, in English, she says she will be unable to transform into a human again as a result. In the Japanese text, she goes one step further and says she will soon lose the ability to communicate with them as well. Chapter 5. The plaza where CORRIN and their HOSHIDAN siblings go is called the Fire Plaza in Japanese, which goes unmentioned in English. Later on, when the topic of the Yato and the HOSHIDAN siblings' divine weapons comes up, the Japanese script mentions Ryoma and Takumi inherited the Raijinto and the Fujinumi from Sumeragi and Mikoto respectively, which is omitted in the English version. Similarly, it's alluded that they belong to a thunder and wind god at one point. Chapter 14. Scarlet's comments of Shev training both HOSHIDAN and Nohrian soldiers in the past, how GARON started restricting their freedom training-wise, and how it's even difficult to leave the place in the present was omitted by the localization. Chapter 17. The path everyone takes to the Ice Tribe is given the name Turian in Japanese, which the English version omits. Chapter 19. Only in the Japanese text near the end of the chapter, the Rainbow Sage has a few extra lines which hints he's one of the game's divine dragons. Chapter 27 and Endgame. When CORRIN confronts GARON for the deaths of Xander and Elise, in the original script, GARON expresses how it was only important to pass his blood, which isn't mentioned in the English version. Revelation. Chapter 7. Azura in the Japanese script refers to Vala as a hell various times, with Anankos himself even being called a demon. Likewise, the mention that Anankos manipulated people's souls to have them kill each other was omitted for the localization. Chapter 12. After the chapter's battle, when CORRIN asks Flora if she knew something about a dragon, in Japanese, she mentions the only thing the Ice Tribes recorded about the dragons were only vague legends and apologizes for it. In English, meanwhile, Flora says she can't think of anything. Chapter 19. When Azura describes Anankos' invisible soldiers only in Japanese, she mentions the dragon is able to send them thanks to his magic and bodies of water. Number 2. The context involving some backstory elements and even some story scenes was altered during the game's translation. Prologue, Chapter 1. For those curious how Leo's line to Elise about wanting to behave like the adult she technically is goes in the original, he simply calls her a brat. The context in which CORRIN was kidnapped by GARON was changed during the translation. Overseas, Ryoma says GARON lured his dad, Sumeragi, to Shev under the pretenses of making a peace conference before killing him. In Japan, Sumeragi was instead trying to establish peaceful relations with Shev, a neighbor kingdom, and GARON ended up ambushing him. Chapter 16. Sakura's suspicions that the sickness Takumi acquires for this chapter could be due to Hoshido's previous skirmish with the wolfskin is present only in the English version. Chapter 17. The conversation CORRIN and Ryoma have about trusting others early in the chapter differs at the end between versions. While the general idea is the same, as in CORRIN is worried about Yago's claim that there is a traitor in his army, Ryoma gives him some pep talk to ease his doubts. Overseas, CORRIN states at the end that while their gut tells him to have faith in his allies, it also tells them Yago's words ring true anyway. After Flora reveals her betrayal, she states only in the Japanese version that in the previous chapter, she getting attacked by Yago was staged. Flora's reasoning for allowing GARON's bidding to avoid the death of her people has different connotations between scripts. In the Japanese version, she states to have been forced to take responsibility for her master's actions, while in the English version she just says she was forced to cooperate. Conquest. Xander's speech about justice being an illusion is very different in each script. The Japanese one goes straight to the point and states the only thing that truly exists is ambition and the expectations that come with it. Meanwhile, the localized one goes more in depth and is more optimistic, encouraging oneself to cling to convictions they see as true and to ambitions of a brighter future for all, lest not the evil desires of others trump ours. Revelation. In chapter 26, when Gunter complains that common people are seen by royals as nothing but pawns that can be disposed of at their leisure, CORRIN, XANDER, and Ryoma's response to him only exists overseas, as in the original text, all three go silent. Number 3. GARON's Japanese character emphasizes his paranoia towards the Hoshidans more than in the English script, and there are different amounts of bad dad GARON between scenes. In Chapter 2, another difference lies when GARON orders XANDER to kill Rinka and Kaze given CORRIN's refusal. In the Japanese text, GARON appeals to how the enemy wouldn't spare them if the scenario was reversed, while in the English version, GARON insists on having them killed again, plus whoever else defies him. Chapter 7 Conquest. GARON's justification for CORRIN's execution has extra meat in the original script. While in English he makes the order by agreeing with Yago's idea CORRIN could be a Hoshidan spy, in Japanese, GARON also wants Nora to avoid having a quote-unquote tragedy of their own, given what happened to Makoto in Chapter 5. Chapter 14. When GARON explains to CORRIN where his decisions are coming from, in Japanese, he never outright states his subjects mean nothing to him, like in the English version, and is slightly less harsh about it. Chapter 16. Only in the overseas release, it's mentioned GARON prohibited everyone from associating with Azura after Queen Katarina's death due to wanting to protect the strength of his legacy. End quote. Number 4. XANDER in the Japanese script isn't as defined towards GARON as often as the localization. After Hans is introduced, only in the localization, XANDER tells CORRIN that he himself arrested the guy in the past. He could very well have arrested him in the Japanese version, but it goes unmentioned. Chapter 9. When XANDER tells GARON he sent CORRIN support for the Ice Tribe Rebellion and should thus be the one killed, afterwards in the original script he remains silent, while in the localization he then tells him either kill me or kill no one. Chapter 27 and Endgame. When XANDER confronts Slime GARON, only in the Japanese text he tells the monster that he had to act like he didn't notice while following his orders. Number 5. All mentions of Conquest CORRIN regretting having sided with Nor in the Japanese version was altered for the English version. Conquest Chapter 15. CORRIN pondering about their choice back in Chapter 6 is executed differently in each version. In Japanese, they consider it would have been best to side with Hoshido given what they've been through, regardless if it meant betraying XANDER and co. While overseas, CORRIN values their bonds with the Norian siblings too much to go through with it, and remains unsure about what would have been the best choice. When fighting fallen Takumi in the endgame, Japanese CORRIN blames themselves for leading Takumi to getting possessed and promises to atone for their actions in the future, while English CORRIN gives all responsibility to whatever's possessing Takumi for his demise. Number 6. On one hand, the Hoshidans are more biased against Nor in the localization, in particular in Conquest. On the other hand, their actual antagonism in Conquest is higher in the original script. Chapter 10. Takumi's lines about how all Norians aren't like normal decent people and they live for the thrill of battle is an addition in the localization. Likewise, in the Japanese script, in his battle conversation with CORRIN, he never says that Norians don't have souls. Chapter 15. The context in which Azura finds Gunter was changed in the localization. In it, Azura found Gunter while visiting Vala out of loneliness, while in the Japanese script, she instead found him while she was being chased out from Hoshido. Number 7. In English Birthright, CORRIN is more hostile with the other Norians compared to the original text, and has the recurring belief that those who side with GARON have to be unaware of how evil he is. In English only, CORRIN threatens to kill Silas after defeating him in battle for not being clear about what he meant by believing there's more important things than following orders. Also in the localization, he's fully convinced GARON tried to kill him via the Gonglari exploding, while in the original script, they admit only having some doubts. Chapter 9. CORRIN acting dismissive of Zola is only present overseas. In Chapter 10, CORRIN telling Zola he will have Hinoka kill him if he tries to betray them is present only in the English version. In the original script, Hinoka is the one who threatens Zola with that, while also lampshading CORRIN's trusting nature for letting him tag along. Chapter 12. When Zola has a change of heart and tries to convince GARON to spare CORRIN, CORRIN reacts with either surprise in the Japanese script or by mocking Zola in the English script for suddenly showing a conscience. Finally, CORRIN accuses both Camilla and Leo at different points in the story of being blind to Garon's evil ambitions, which never happens in the Japanese script. These are the handfuls of script differences that I personally found the most noteworthy of the main story. The ones that I find the most interesting is how Birthright CORRIN acts more aggressive in those instances, especially towards Zola and his Norian family. It's nice to see a little bit more grit towards this character. I was also surprised to learn in the localized game, Hoshidans are more hostile towards Norians, what with the Norians don't have souls thing. Like I said before, these differences don't bear a huge impact to the story because it's more or less the same script. What do you guys think? Any localization change you like or dislike, and why? And also, why do you think some of these changes even occurred in the first place? This video didn't highlight every single change, so once again, I suggest you take a look at the CORRIN fans' work. Like I said, they combed through the game, and a big thanks to them as well. That will do it for today's video. If you liked it, please leave a like on this video so YouTube thinks it's good. If you have any thoughts on what was discussed here, please leave a comment below. The channel is just over 200 subscribers until 91,000. For every video, this channel gets closer and closer to the silver play button, making Fire Emblem content. If you haven't subscribed yet and you've enjoyed this and my previous videos, consider doing that. Finally, a massive thank you to my patrons who you see on the screen here. Thanks to their constant support, I've been able to do this for so long with no signs of stopping now. Thanks for watching. Deuces.